Hello, hello. It's been a little while since I've done a regular one of my lives, and I didn't really tell you I was going live today. So I apologize for that. But this replay will be up and you'll be able to see it later and comment on the replay. So thank you for joining me if you are seeing this. And who has a habit they want to change? I think pretty much everybody has some kind of habit that they want to change, right? That's what we'll be talking about today. And also the real scoop on changing habits. I know that you've probably heard that meme from the internet and Dr. Google that 21 days to change a habit, 21 days to change a habit. That came from a study, and somebody pulled that line out of there, and it got repeated and repeated and repeated around the world, around the internet. But it's really not that simple. Did you know that there is actually a mathematical model for how long it takes to change a habit? There is actually numbers that they can plug in, values that they plug in, and they can calculate how long it takes to change a habit. And it can be anywhere from, say, 18 days to 258 days, depending on a whole variety of factors. So if you have been beating yourself up about changing habits, and if it's hard to change habits, then give yourself a break because there's really more behind the scenes, right? So, first, I want to talk about perception versus reality. Have you ever thought, had to do something and thought, oh, this can't be too hard? It's really simple. All you do are these couple of simple steps. It's really not a big deal. How hard can it be? I've recently had this experience where I wanted to make some waffles. I've never made waffles before, but it can't be that hard, right? There's a waffle maker, you plug it in, you heat it up, it tells you when it gets hot, you pour the batter in, you close it, you wait a while. I even watched a quick little YouTube video on it. So, how hard can it be? However, I was trying to make a recipe that was really not that well defined and also included a whole banana in it, which kind of changes the consistency of the batter. They didn't really say how to deal with that. So I thought, oh, it can't be that hard. So I made my batter. I got my waffle maker ready. I sprayed it down. I thought, how hard can this be? And I poured it in, and it was a disaster, kind of a hysterical disaster. And I will put the picture in the comments here for your amusement. But the moral of the story here is that there is a science to the consistency of the batter, and you have to be specific. And there is a science to changing habits, and you need to really know what the keys are to changing those habits. So the same is true there. So we think it's really easy. It's really more complicated than that. So, and this is because of the pattern loops that are created in our brain and the way that we function on autopilot as well. So, let's consider a habit. Let's take a habit like smoking, just for an example. So, if you smoked a pack a day for 20 years, that means that would be about 146,000 repetitions of that habit in your brain and repetitions of that reward. Now, do you think simple willpower can compete with 146,000 repetitions? I don't think so. Simple willpower is really just not going to not going to cut it in this situation. So give yourself a break. Don't beat yourself up about that. But there are some specific shortcuts that you can take to break habits and to change patterns. And let's talk about these three specific things that you can do. Let's break it down. So, the first thing that you can do is to identify the triggers. What are the triggers for this habit? So, just continue on. Don't try to do anything differently, but just continue on and notice where the triggers are. Is it a time of day? And welcome if you're just joining us. Is it a time of day every morning you do this habit? Is it people that you're around, certain friends? Is it a certain emotion? When you're sad or stressed, you eat this certain food. Is it another activity? For example, I talk to a lot of people who say, whenever I have a cup of tea, I really need to have something sweet. So you'll start to notice all of the triggers. And there can also be triggers upon triggers. So you get stressed and you eat and then you feel bad because you just kind of went off the rails and ate whatever. And then that makes you feel even worse. So then you eat more to feel better. So it becomes this loop. And really, where we need to start is to just give ourselves forgiveness, give ourselves grace, stop judging ourselves, and have some self awareness around, oh, isn't that interesting? So replace that judgment with curiosity, which that's a whole other live that we can talk about. But the first step is to really identify those triggers. Um, and so that's really great information. Just write them down about what are the times a day that you do that or you feel that pull to do that, whether it's eating something, smoking, whatever it is. Then the second step in this is start to notice the reward. So all of habit change is really driven by rewards and how your brain learns. So your brain learns through rewards based learning. So it learns if something's pleasurable, I'm going to do it more. I'm going to wire that. If something is not pleasurable, I'm going to stay away from that. So you might take a bite of something and say, ooh, that's delicious. And I kind of feel I get this happiness, the serotonin afterwards. And your brain says, ooh, eat more of that. Or it could be you opened up the carton of milk and it was spoiled and now or you ate at a restaurant that wasn't, and you had the dish that was really terrible. So now you know not to have that again. So the rewards are really where it's at for changing your habits. And what happens is so often we are on autopilot. So it's this combination of your brain creates these loops and then we just live in autopilot. So we're just in this autopilot mode and we sit down to have a bite of chips. And the first bite is amazing. Have you ever had this experience where you sitting down to eat something and you have a bite and the first bite is amazing? Wow, it's great. And then you sort of get into autopilot mode and you kind of check out and you're kind of just doing it without even thinking about it on autopilot. And you sort of can't get out of this mode. Now, this happens not just with food, but this can happen with Facebook, on the internet. Your phone dings or games, different things like that. Also with watching a movie or a TV show, a lot of these different things that they have certain rewards and we get stuck in autopilot and we're just kind of in that same loop. So what happens is, particularly with food and other things that I've studied, that first bite tastes amazing. And then each bite, it tastes less and less amazing, but we don't realize that. We keep thinking that we're going to go back to the first bite. If we just keep taking bites, it's going to get better. And all we have to do is go back to that first bite. So just keep on. Maybe this will be the time that it'll taste as good. So we keep going and we're on autopilot. So we're kind of checked out. We're not even aware of what's going on in our body and what's happening. So we're just sort of doing this activity. And that's how we kind of get into these habits and these patterns. So the way out of that is just to start to tune in the moment while you're doing it, while it's happening. So you can tune in and notice, how does it really feel? So you may find that when you really tune in on the 100th bite, it really doesn't taste as good anymore. And they have done studies to show that the taste that we register is less and less and less with each bite that we take. So that the second, third, fifth, 100th bite does not taste like the first bite. But we keep trying to get back to that same feeling from the first bite. So the way out is just to bring yourself right into that moment when you're doing that activity and just to notice, what does it feel like? Is it rewarding? So that's the important thing to do right then. You cannot think your way out of a bad habit. You need to experience your way out of it. So if you can experience that, oh, these chips are now really salty and they're not that good, or these, I might start to feel sick if I have another bite, or these cigarettes kind of taste disgusting. Whatever it is, if you can tune in to the reward and realize that it's really not that rewarding, that helps your brain to rewire that. This is true with food and emotions. So you might be anxious and then eat to calm yourself down, or you might be sad or worried or be emotional and then you eat to kind of change that emotional state. In that moment, you can realize, is this really, how is this rewarding? Is this really, maybe the first bite is rewarding and that's fine, but the 10th bite is no longer rewarding and it's no longer changing your state and it's not tasting like it did. So it's really not helping anymore. And once you can really feel that, then it begins to change it in your mind. And so your mind will start to update that reward. And that's actually one of the things in the mathematical model is how rewarding is it this time when you do it versus how rewarding when it was last time when you did it. So it's going to update those rewards. So it gets less and less rewarding. This is going to help you speed up your rate of change. So just becoming aware right in the moment. So once you can start to become aware of it, then you can get yourself to do a new activity. Even if it's just tuning into the breath, into your environment. What does the sky look like? How are you feeling right now? What would feel better? Just tuning into something different that can be giving you what you need. And so you can get some huge gains from just kind of making a small little change of doing something different. Now, one approach, and this is again a whole other live, is to slowly upgrade your reward. So some people start with smoking and they'll replace smoking with candy. And then later on, then they replace candy with something else. Maybe it's chips. Typically, that's progression I see. If people are, say, quitting alcohol or drugs or smoking, you quit the thing that's killing you fastest, the first. So you quit those things the first, and then the replacement becomes sugar or candy. And then a replacement for that, then you sort of realize the damage from that. Then a replacement for that often becomes other things. It becomes chips and quick carbs, or sometimes nut butters really grab people, and that becomes the new thing. So you are making progress because the candy is better than, say, the drinking, but it still has its issues. And then the junk food, maybe, or the chips, or say whatever, is maybe better than the candy, slightly better, but you're still kind of replacing one thing for another. So if you, and you can do that, that is a method that some people use to kind of slowly, and then once you sort of get to the point where it's like chips and nut butter, that's sometimes is some of the things that I see, then you can start to replace that and move on. So that is one of the ways that you can do it. And another way is kind of the mindfulness, which I know doesn't sound that exciting, but sometimes it's the mindfulness of feeling where things are in your body and choosing a whole different activity that you can do. So hopefully this was helpful for you, in that the three things, let's review these three things. Number one, just map the triggers. Just map the triggers. When does it happen? Does it happen at a time of day? Does it happen with certain people? Does it happen when you do a particular activity? Does it happen when you feel a certain way? Does it happen when you're eating, drinking something else? So just be curious. What are all the places where it happens? And start writing them down. Number two is just notice what it feels like. How rewarding really is it in that moment when you're doing it? And you may find like, oh, this really isn't that good. You do it because the first bite is good, or this is what you've always done, but you can start to realize this is really not helping that much. This really doesn't feel that good. And number three is just replacing that. So hopefully these gives you a good guide for changing the habits. Do have a question for you, is what are there habits, if you'd like to share, you don't have to, but if you'd like to share, Are there habits that you would like to change? And number 2 is, would it be helpful if you had kind of a quick guide in a written format that you could download for this to remind you of the 1, 2, 3 different steps that we did here? If so, drop it in the comments and I'll make that and I'll add that so people can be able to get that. So if you missed this recording, this will be out there and recorded for a little bit. Thank you for joining us. And if you're not already in the group, you can join us. The link should be in the comments. And thank you so much.